I'll take it as yes. So I'm Preeti Wadhwani. I'm a senior software engineer working at Red Hat. And today I'm going to talk about microfrontend architecture in React. A bit about me, I like to explore JavaScript and also UX. How the product is working, motivates me to work on the products and explore different technologies. I also like to meet people at different meetups and conferences. When I get time, I try to organize one. So it's a bit about me. Now let's go into the topic. Let me start with the story, a hypothetical story. Okay. So since a lot of social apps are getting popular these days, and the new ones are coming, I'm sure a lot of you might have gone to Threads. So with that, one of the company decided to create a social media app called DevConnect, which is basically a social media app for people who are attending conferences, and they should be able to, connect with each other, share, network, collaborate. So initially they started, with building the app because they were pretty new. They just had a monolithic architecture. They started simple, but soon the app got very famous and it got attention. A lot of developers started using it, and as it was growing, a lot of features was getting added, and it was getting complex to manage the app. So they felt like we would have to move to some other architecture since the monolithic is not working. One being that it is very tightly coupled. If we have to deploy anything, we have to do all of it. We can't work into separation. We can't create like separate teams. And at the back end, they already had microservice architecture. So they wanted to adapt and create like independent teams, which can work independently and deploy the features. So they recognized the need of adapting to micro-frontend architecture and started exploring more on that. So they started with the research and analysis phase, that what all changes we'll have to make in our code base. And there was already a micro-frontend master team at their company, so they took the help from them. They started engaging with that team, asked them that if since you have already worked on it, what kind of changes you'll suggest us to if you want to migrate to that. They created a migration plan, and they decided to start small and start with first one feature in their app. So they decided we have like a feeds feature. We'll start with that page and we'll migrate that to a micro frontend first. So the micro-frontend master teams, they try to explain this team that, how it's gonna look like at the end if you will decide, you will have like, suppose different teams. They gave an example, like you'll have like a search team, product team, and they all will have their own backend and frontend, and they will be able to work independently. And so after that, some people from the micro-frontend team, they started explaining what are micro-frontends. So basically, it's a new pattern in web application where people, you try to compose same, you try to impose the different federated modules and build a single app. And since their code base was into React and they were using Webpack in their application, they started exploring that what are the different features of Webpack they can use to, implement the micro-frontend architecture. So the module federation plugin is there in Webpack, which helps you to load the different, compiled modules at the runtime. So this feature was introduced in Webpack 5, and Nitin already spoke about plugins. Even I didn't know that 80% of Webpack is plugin. And how the module federation, if you want to implement it, there are different ways different companies implement that, but the simplest form, if I have to explain, and which this team decided to adopt, is there is an host app, which you can think of it will act as a master, which will have like navigation, few common things, and then there will be different modules. Like, for example, feeds will be one module, profile will be one module, and you have to discuss with your team and decide that how we want to architect our different modules. So let's see a bit of the code and a sample code how we can do that. So I've created a sample app. So as I said that this app had to feed. It's like a social media app, so we are trying to convert feeds into a micro front end. And if you remember this, if you remember this diagram, we need a host app and we need the modules. So now for this example, we are considering feeds as one module. So I've already created it. The first place you will have to make the changes is in your Webpack config file. You go in with your Webpack config file, you import the module federation plugin, and in that you specify the configuration. Basically, feeds is a micro front end, and it will tell that it will expose itself, and you need to specify which path. And then you can also specify if you want to, the dependency which should be used as a shared dependencies between different micro front end. So you can specify it here. So once you made the changes in the feeds app, you run that. I'll just. So the feeds app looks like this, okay? So we all have a feeds app, and now the second app was we need a host app, which will host the feeds app inside that. So I've created a host app, and since I told you the host app will act like a master, so in host app, we will again import the module federation plugin. We will specify which is the remote, which are the remotes, basically the micro front ends, which we want to load. Okay, so we have specified that whatever the configuration we had mentioned in our feeds Webpack config file, we have specified the same here, that there is a feeds micro front end, and this is where you'll get it. And similarly, you can we have specified the shared dependencies. So I'm already running the host app. So let's see the host app. How does it look? So the host app is normal app, which will, in reality, it will have navigation and different other things. But for the demo purpose, it's a very basic app with a header. And if we look at the host app app.js file, now I want to import here below the header. I would like that the feeds should come here. So what will I do? I'll say that I'll import the feeds, and I'll say, OK, just add it here. I'll uncomment it. And the feeds are there. So if I'll make changes now suppose if I'm making any changes in my micro front end, I'm a feeds team. There were some changes. We had to do some color changes, and I did some color changes to the feeds app. So if I'll make any color changes, suppose I'll change it to blue, and it has got changed in the feeds micro front end. And when we'll go to host and when we'll reload, the changes will also come there. So basically now this is consuming the feeds micro front end, and the codes rely on the feeds, and the feeds team can work independently and do all the changes. They might have to coordinate with the host team in case they want to share any data. But apart from that, there is no communication required. Normally, when we try to build the apps in a way that they should be pretty much independent, and there should be less communication as possible. So this was a small demo I created just to explain how micro front-end architecture works and how you can implement it. I have put the code on the GitHub. I will share it later. Let's go to the presentation. And yeah, you'll have to, if you want to explore, you have to go and, code more and see the changes. Because until you won't try it, it's gonna be difficult to get it. And one more thing about the Module Federation I wanted to mention, that a lot of people think that Module Federation, we might have independent, like we had feeds, we had profile, we had settings for this application, but it can happen that you might have some common components, which all of the micro frontend might need. So in that case, you will create a nested module, which might be shared by all of the micro frontend. So it's not necessary that it has to be a separate unit. It can be, you can also create a shared micro frontend. Now, since we have only 5 minutes left, I'll just quickly go through few of the good part and the bad part of, not so good part of the micro frontend architecture. So based on my experience, whatever I had at work, it is good. It helps to, when we have an independent team, we have to just focus on our features, so coordination between the other developers. We have like small team, so it's just the pretty much that feature-focused PM and developers, and they are all doing only the work for that particular feature. And it really helps when, if suppose something doesn't work on production, if your app is responsible, then it will just show the error for your app and not the entire website. So that also gives a good user experience. But the not so good part is sometimes that happens, since you have mentioned that a lot of dependencies will be there in different micro frontends, so you'll have to manage the versioning of those dependencies. Even if you're mentioning that there are shared dependencies, it might happen that the version specified by micro frontend is different, and you might run into those kind of dependency issues. So you'll have to look into that. Another thing, if you are creating any API, between different micro frontends for communication, you'll also have to think about if anyone wants to communicate, how they're gonna do it. If the API changes, how you gonna share that data with everyone. So documentation is very important, I feel, if you are developing a micro frontend architecture, because if you won't keep your documentation updated, any new person, any new team which will like to onboard to this kind of architecture, it's just gonna take more time, and they're gonna be, it will take time for them to find out where all things are. So if anything is there, you have to keep on documenting. And I think, yeah, apart from this, I think everything is good. And if you want to deep dive, I have put the Dev Connect code on GitHub. I'll keep on adding more details into it. If you are interested, you are free to check it out. There was a book I was reading, Building Micro Frontend Architecture. It's a really nice book. I've put the link here. Do check it out. It explains in detail a lot of things about micro frontend architecture, what are different ways, and how you can implement it. So I'll definitely ask you to give it a read. And also, I recently came across the CLI tool. You can just use that to create a micro frontend. It will ask you a few things like what is your name, what is your app name, what language you want to create, and it just will create a basic skeleton. So even if that really helps, if you decide to create a micro frontend architecture in your company, it's really good to have something which is common. So any new team joins the team, they can just start with the basic template or any tooling you have created, that if you are starting, it will have all the common dependencies, all common libraries you are using. So yeah, I think that is it. I just want to thank you, everyone, and all the React Nexus organizers, you all for listening to my talk, and people in the community who helped me with my talk. So thank you, everyone. I think I've finished on time.